welcome back to another illustration process video. This time I'm taking a look at PalaDan, the pilot that I mentioned in my Designing a PalaDan video. And this time I'm going through the process of my initial designs for the main villain of the series, or the overarching villain of the series, which is the Lich. He is a Lich wizard kind of character. Eldritch being that was corrupted by dark magics and has some dark secrets and a mysterious relationship to our protagonist PalaDan, weird interest in his exploits that we kind of explore over the course of the series. And so in doing a Lich, I really wanted to kind of find a way to get something that reads clearly to those who are literate of fantasy tropes, something that would read as a Lich very clearly, but also not borrow too heavily from what has already been displayed in media. So plenty of Dungeons & Dragons illustrations were a great reference to start from, and also obviously Adventure Time has the Lich as a character that is a great source of inspiration and a really great iteration on just the mythical creature of a Lich. I think that was just really well done, really cool, and also Ron Perlman's voice is so menacing. God, the man is amazing. Anyway, I digress. So in designing my Lich for my show, really trying to find something that would communicate that, but I also wanted something, because this is a little bit more of a classic sword and sorcery tale, something a little bit more refined. I didn't want like an eldritch, like deep forest Lich being. I wanted someone that could maybe infiltrate a high court, conceivably, as like kind of a worm tongue like advisor. And so keeping him in some kind of like noble's robes and cloak was definitely something that I wanted, and also making him really threatening and imposing in terms of having not like a frail physique, a skeletal physique was something that I wanted. So where I really focused a lot of my intention was in the face, getting that to read as more zombified undead, basically. And so getting those really hollowed out eye sockets, no eyebrows, just kind of the brow ridge of the eye socket, and then kind of shaving off the cartilage of the nose and getting the nasal cavity as the cutoff for the nose, and those mummified, dried out lips, deep sunken cheekbones, all of these things that read as undead very clearly, but pair them with a very lively, kind of, maybe not bulky, but very, very cut physique, so that it's someone who is not only imposing in terms of the implication of the specter of death, but also imposing physically as a challenge to anyone who would try and thwart his evil plans. And you know, that sense of sinister menace, I think, is a hard line to toe. You want someone that can be... I'm always a big fan of villains that are very cool and calm and collected, very self-assured, and you know, because it gives a really good contrast to your hero, who, you know, obviously has a whole journey to go on to kind of find themselves most times, and become the best version of themselves. So letting the villain be very assured in their villainy is, I think, just a really effective way to make that work. And so here I've got some kind of just a generic pose of him with the cloak on, some idea of the proportions, some stuff that still needs to be worked out, like how much I'm going to define the musculature underneath the cloak, or with the pantaloons and the boots, which is something that, you know, in PalaDan, I'm still kind of figuring out the degree to which it's going to be, you know, heroic proportions and more anatomical, and how cartoony it's going to be. You know, some of my favorite work is Samurai Jack and stuff like that, and even that evolved over time between the more heroic proportions over the cartoony proportions. So it is a kind of a difficult line to toe in terms of deciding how you're going to represent your characters. And even as I'm coloring stuff in, I'm still going back and really tweaking the proportions and the silhouette. I'm really kind of settling in on this kind of concave point, three-pronged point for the head of the Lich. Partially because I wanted to get some implication of like a crown, like a king's crown with the main point in the center and then the almost points off to the side, and getting it that way. And now kind of trying to do a little bit more of a story-oriented piece of him gazing into a cauldron and maybe reciting an incantation or speaking to someone that he is viewing in the well or the cauldron, or what have you. And that really helps me get into the zone after I have played with just the general proportions and the primitive shapes that I want to use to design the character. And you'll notice that I actually do have PalaDan and the Lich operating on some very similar primitives. Part of that is just because that's what I'm most comfortable doing, and I am kind of sticking to my comfort zone, because I'm not a great character designer. That's a discipline I'm still learning very much. But also because I wanted them to be foils of each other. I wanted there to be some similarity. So it's not just lack of knowledge. Some of it is intentional. But man, really, when you're going in and making these designs, having your first couple of passes just be working out the core shapes is great, but then eventually just having to go in and figure out like what the storytelling elements are going to be, and going and drawing the character in that light, and you really start to figure out which pieces are important. If I know this character is going to be doing X, Y, and Z things over the course of the story, I should really focus on having these aspects of the design highlighted. And here still definitely working out the chin. It's got a long chin, very big jaw. That is changed from the initial 2 designs that I did. It's not final, but it's honing in more on what I think he should look like. And it really, I think, helps to communicate that skeletal nature a little bit more. And also simplifying a little bit. Those first couple of designs, I was being a little less economical with some of the design elements, because I think when you're starting out, you have to kind of put everything in and then pull back from there. I have learned over time that it's much easier to draw it a little more realistic, a little bit more grounded, and pull back from there, remove details rather than have to kind of add them back in and figure out like physically how your character exists in a world with gravity and physics and just like living in that world, or unliving in this case maybe. And now, God, just figuring out the palette, finding some kind of cool color palette for the skin that communicates as undead, and then figuring out what the suit should look like. The cloak is obviously going to be a dark gray because that's just the most evil thing. And then I'm not super sold on this. I have this kind of red tunic and pantaloons kind of as the final pieces, and then doing just a very simple background, which just learning more and more every day about backgrounds as well, because I'm not a great background artist either. But doing this all yourself, you really have to challenge yourself to try all of these different disciplines and just make yourself do them. But that was really the design process for the Lich. I'll go over some more of the exploration pieces at another point in time. If you would like to see that, or you're interested in more of it, definitely go ahead and subscribe so you can be notified of that. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this design, if you think that he succeeds in being a menacing Lich. And stay tuned for the next episode. Without further ado, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.